Yeah. All right, we're live in this thing. So now what we're gonna look at is what we call ES6. All right. Um, just like any other programming language or any human language, rather, JavaScript evolves, right? And the way that we've been writing JavaScript thus far with these lessons is uh, an older version of of the language. You can see JavaScript is not stagnant. It's not a stagnant language. Um, there have been modifications that have been made to make programming cleaner, more efficient, and overall better experience. ECMAScript 6, or ES6 for short, this will be on your pop quiz, was first introduced back in 2015. And I think it was also called ES 2015. I want to say something like that. And this wasn't the first time that the JavaScript language was updated, but this was kind of like a pretty major one right here. Is a big shift. But it was first introduced again in 2015. And since then, there have been some updates to the JavaScript language. However, the team of JavaScript just decided that whatever changes, whatever updates are made, it still falls under that ES6 umbrella. Obviously, here with ES6, syntactical changes were made to JavaScript that became the new standard for writing it. Okay, so we're going to look at some of these changes and we're going to employ these changes now. You don't have to. Okay, the way that we've been writing JavaScript up to this point, it works just fine. We see that hasn't been any major issues or whatever. However, there are some things that are different with ES6, and we're going to look at those right now. So to start off, we're going to use we've employed rather the keywords let and const. Uh, let and const keywords are used to create containers where we previously used var. We can still use var, okay? But we have two new keywords that we can add, and that's let and const. The let keyword works very similar to var. When using let, we can assign variables that can be changed later. There are some differences when it comes to scope, but for the most part, let can be used interchangeably with var. Okay, and also the const keyword, it creates a container. However, with const, we create a constant, which means it cannot be changed later. Also, when using const, it must be initialized and assigned at the same line. So let's look at that. So here we're dealing with ES6, and the first thing we're looking at is let and const. And again, let and const are what initializes a container, much like the var keyword. So where I have var foo right here, I can replace this with let foo. All right, and it's going to be an error right here because it says foo has already been declared. But what I could do right here, let's say let foo get 5, right? I could do that. Var foo gets 5. And let me console this bad boy right here for right now. If I log out foo, obviously I'll get 5. Okay, we know that we're better developers now, not as terrible as we used to be. So I can say var foo gets 5. That's what we've been doing. Well, now I can, instead of saying var foo, I can say let foo. And here I'm saying let foo get 5, and I still get 5. So var and let, they work close together. Let's see where it might be a little different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say for, I'm going to say let I get 0. I is less than 10. I plus plus. Let's console.log I. So right now, this is just a regular for loop. For, and instead of saying var I get 0, I'm saying let I get 0. Okay. And obviously that's going to console 0 to 9. All the digits, what we have there. I'm going to try this. I'm going to say here outside of the for loop, I'm going to log out I. Does it do anything? Oh, it says I is not defined. There's the difference. Because when we dealt with scope, and I'll do it again here. I'll do an example here so we can see the difference. I'm going to say for var j gets 0. I'm sorry, j less than 5, j plus plus, and I'm going to console j. Oh, let me comment this out right here. It's going to get hung up right there. So here I'm consoling j, and there's 0 through 4. And now when I come over here and I say outside of the loop, I'm going to say console.log j, and it returns 5. So here's the difference between var and let. This is where the difference between the two of them occur. When I use the let keyword inside of this for loop, that variable stays right there inside of the for loop.
What was inside your H1 in the index?
Just ES6.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does the E need to be capitalized?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Just making sure.
Mm-hmm. The difference between var and let, we can see right here. When I use the let keyword inside of this for loop, this variable stayed within the scope of this loop. It didn't set outside of this code block. When I try to console I here, I got an error saying that I is not defined. And that's different from here when I use the var keyword. I use var inside of this for loop. I console j, but then when I came outside of the loop and console j, it knew what j was. So that variable j, even though it was created here inside of the for loop, it's still a global variable. And that is different from using the let keyword. This let keyword makes this variable here, I, it puts it in local scope. So it's a local variable, which means that I could essentially, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, let I get 15. Okay. And I'm going to uncomment this. Okay. And you can see here, while it console the numbers 0 through 9, as doing here on line 15, that's what we're having it to do. Here on line 18, when I console.log I, it knows of this I here, not the I within the scope. So I was not changed by the for loop. I is still returning or logging out 15. So that's that's the big difference when it comes to using var and let. Um, Me personally, I roll with ES6 just about wherever I can. I don't employ the var keyword because I like being able to control the scope using let. So that's why I roll with let as opposed to var. Now some people like to use var, and that's fine. But in a case like this, you need to understand what's happening if you use var as opposed to let. So let me come over here and do a console.clear. All right, and now let's look at const. Okay, because right now I could say let boo, and that's initialized. If I come over here and I console.log boo, I'll get undefined, but there is an existence of boo. Okay. Um, Even though I haven't assigned anything, it exists. With const creates, it's not a variable. And I know some people like to say it's a variable, but there's a big difference in it because it's just the wording. But the variables change. Okay. Const is a constant. Okay. So I'm gonna use the const keyword. I'm gonna say baz. Well, right now I see I'm already getting an error here without me having done anything. And the error is that missing initializer in const declaration. In other words, I have to assign it a value on the same line that I'm creating this container. So I can say const baz gets hello. Now this works. This is fine. So I have a constant baz, which is hello. And if I log out baz, then sure enough, I'll get hello. So it works just fine. Everything's cool. But again, with a constant, what does a constant mean? What does that mean? It's consistent. Yeah, it doesn't change.
What does the bat stand for?
It's nothing. It's just developer gibberish because the focus is not necessarily on the variable name, but on the concept of what's happening here. So with const, I've set baz to hello. What's different between a let and const is, so here I have boo. I can say boo gets, boo, right? I could do that. And then I can come over here and say boo gets false. So I can change boo as much as I need to. No errors here. If I come over here and say Baz gets goodbye, when I do that, I can look over here and I see an error. It says assignment to constant variable. So we have assigned or tried to reassign a constant, which we cannot do. So using the const keyword, that locks in the value, whatever that value may be. Okay. So where would I use const? Uh, in like a real sense.
In a similar situation we were talking about earlier with the documents that you don't want to be changed.
Correct. With some documents that I wouldn't want to be changed, I would use const. I even like the data storage in itself. If it's an array, say I'm building out an array. let me comment this out right here. You know, I could do something like this. I could say var array gets, you know, here's an array of numbers. I could do that, right? And this works just fine. And then I can come over here and say array gets, haha, right? And that works just fine. But what did I just do? I took this data structure that was an array and I completely wiped it out by making it a string. Ooh, that's dangerous, right? So I don't want to do that, particularly with my. I'm sorry.
Do they not like each other?
No, they don't like each other, as a matter of fact. So what I did, I just took this array, and this array is like such important documentation that it's just going to, you know, change the way, you know, the WHO does their things, everybody's health records, whatever. Um, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to mutate this. I don't want to make any change to this at all. So where I would use const, instead, I would say const array. And that way, this will always remain an array. Okay. So now when I come over here, it's like, can't do that. And now that this array has been assigned it's been assigned to be an array, I can still make changes within the array. So I can say array.push 4. I can still add an item to an array. I can say array 0 gets 15. I can update the contents of the array if I wanted to. I could do all of that. It's still an array, so I can still do all the things I could do with an array. However, what I cannot do is update the structure of the array or the storage of it. And I'm able to do that because I'm using the const keyword. That is creating, again, a constant. We can't change it. We cannot mutate the data type, if you will, itself. So that's the first big change that was made. I'm not saying it was the first big change made. Let me not say that, but it's the first one we're looking at. Okay, with variables and the keywords let const, they can be used as opposed to var. And like I said, for me, and what I will do, I'm going to use let and const from here on out. But if you want to use var, if you feel comfortable with var, that's fine. Just understand what can happen when using var. So that was the big change that was made. Here's an example here. Here we have let my age. So I am initializing variable my age. And with my age, you see it can be updated here, going from 43 to 44. Const am awesome. That's true. Okay. So what that means is I can't go and change am awesome to false. It'll say, hey, that causes an error. Okay. So once we have assigned a data type, it cannot be changed. All right. So that's cool. Let's look at this other one. We have a new one here. We have what's called the ternary operator. And the ternary operator, it is a new way to write if-else statements. Okay. So let's do this. Let's go back and do that am hungry example. All right. We'll say let am hungry. We're going to set that to true. And so what we did before, we said if am hungry, then console.log I'm hungry. when it's lunch. Else console.log. I just ate. Ready for a nap. So here we have an if-else statement. It says, hey, if I'm hungry, if that's true, then we'll console I'm hungry when it's lunch. Else, we'll console I just ate, I'm ready for a nap. And when I come over here and look, it says I'm hungry when it's lunch. Okay, cool. With the ternary operator, we can write this differently. Matter of fact, what we can do is instead of having all these curly braces and parentheses and everything, we could do this whole thing on one line. And it looks like this. We have our condition right here, in which case it's am hungry. We have a question mark. So this is, we can think of this as like answering a question or asking a question. Am hungry, is that true? Question mark. Okay. If it is, then console this message, let's eat. And then we have a colon here, and this colon represent else. Else console.log, I can wait a few more hours. You can see here, you can think of the first clause being read as a question. Is am hungry true? After the question mark, we state what we want the program to do when the clause evaluates to true. The colon represents the else clause. You can see the ternary operator cleans up chains of if statements significantly. Notice we don't have all those pesky curly braces. So let's rewrite this same thing, except we're going to use a ternary. So I'm just going to comment this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I don't need to use the if keyword. I can just say am hungry, question mark. And if I'm hungry, then we'll log out. I'm hungry. I'm not going to write all the rest of that stuff. And then I'm put a colon here, which means else. And then we'll console.log. I just ate. So this does the exact same thing. I'm going to come over here and look in the console. And there it is. I'm hungry. This does the exact same thing, except it's done on one line as opposed to multiple lines. And if I come over here, if I set this to false, I set am hungry to false, we get I just ate. So we see that this works. The ternary operator, again, cleans up a lot. We don't have to worry about all those curly braces, multiple lines of parentheses, and the use of the keywords if and else if. We see that we don't need to use that anymore. Also, with the ternary, we could chain the ternary much like we did with the if, else if, and have those else if this and else if that. We could do that. Me personally, whenever I have to chain it a lot, I don't like to use a ternary. I like to use it for cases such as this where it can be done quickly. And if I don't want to have an else, in other words, if it's just an if statement, what I can do instead of having something here at all, what I could do, I just replace that with null. So I can say, hey, if I'm hungry, do this, otherwise, or else, it's not going to do anything at all. So now when I come back over here and look at the console, it's not going to return null. We're not going to see anything. But if I set am hungry to true, then it will console I'm hungry. So I love ternary operators. Those of you who've been around me for a while, you know I like the ternary operator, and when I can, I like to employ the ternary as opposed to um, using some other method, using the if, else if, and all that. I don't like to do that if I don't have to. And we can, with this, we can do some cool stuff. Okay, I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to make a function called say hello. And I'm gonna console.log hello. And I'll just return, do that. And then I'm gonna make another function called say goodbye. Console.log goodbye. And return. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a ternary to see what the time of day is. And if the day is, say, before 5 o'clock p.m., it's going to say hello. After 5 o'clock, it's going to say goodbye. All right. So let's use that date object that we had before. I'm going to say let today get new date. Okay. And then what I could do is I can set up my ternary here, and I'll say today dot get hours. If it is less than 17, is this true that today dot get hours is less than 17? If it is, well, then we'll run the say hello function. Else, we'll run say goodbye. And I get hello because at the time of this video, it's not 5 o'clock p.m. yet. You definitely, well, I'm not gonna say definitely, but good luck catching me coding after 5 p.m. But here, we're setting, we're looking at the time and say, hey, if this is true that it is less than 17 or 5 o'clock p.m., we're going to run the say hello function, else say goodbye. So you can store information up in like functions like so, okay, and you can decide which function that you want to be ran. So I'm going to change this up a little bit. I'm going to say just right now it's 10 o'clock a.m. here, 10, 11 a.m. So I'm going to set this to 9 o'clock. So I'll say if today that I get hours is less than 9, in other words, it's not 9 o'clock yet, it should say goodbye, and it does. So it works. Cool. Awesome. Awesome sauce. So these are the first two concepts with ES6 that you'll want to use, okay? So you can, again, nothing beats practice. I would write out an if statement and somewhere using let and const as your variables, and then write an if statement all the way out in the traditional way, and then go back and try to write it as a ternary. Just get the practice in doing that. The thing that I've noticed that trips up codelings is, in particular when it comes to the ternary, is the use of the question mark and the colon, making sure that they're in the right place and then what you want them to do. Now, one thing that you cannot do with a ternary operator is I couldn't have like a whole block of code. Like say I couldn't come over here and do a for loop. You see it, I'm getting this big error right here. It doesn't like that. Okay, so no, you can't do that, which is why what I just showed you, what you can do is if you wrap your task inside of a function, then you can instantiate that function here inside of the ternary. So I could, this could do a whole lot of stuff. It could do more than say hello. I could do, many more things here. And I can run it all right there in that one line, as opposed to having multiple lines of stuff or your big block of code. So that's something that you want to keep in mind when it comes to using ternary operator. We're going to keep rolling with some more ES6 syntax in the next video. I need some water though. I'm parched. So like, comment, share, all this stuff, so the executive producer can have all the things that they want. All right.